Good afternoon and welcome to Aico TV. I'm Alex Garmston.
And I'm Holly Moore.
And today we're celebrating 27 episodes of Aico TV. We're filming on Red Nose Day. So when you're watching this on Friday, we were filming the week before. So as part of our Aico in the Community CSR initiative, we're dressed in 80s themed outfits. So we've got Frankie over here and a dodgy looking version of Tom Cruise. But I assure you our Aico TV episode today is a lot more exciting. So here's what's coming up. Firstly, we have our second instalment of CIH Ideas Lab discussing ISH 2.
Next, we'll visit Stirling Council, who are implementing our smart home technology.
Then, to carry on our Scottish theme, we have our Relationships Manager, Tony Boyle, talking to Select.
And lastly, we will learn how to house code an EI 650 smoke alarm. First up on today's episode, we're going to revisit the CIH Ideas Lab with our Relationships Manager, Tony Boyle. Following on from episode 26, we will see the panel discuss whether ISH 2 will achieve net zero in social housing.
Great to have you on, Simon. And it's important to mention that you are a resident from, I believe, the Grampian Housing Association. So it's great to have the perspective from a tenant's sort of point of view, really. So that's excellent. So thanks for coming on this morning. So we're just, I mean, this is a subject we can talk about for days, really, and I know we're quite short on time, so I'm just going to kind of kick off. So we've got some questions that I have prepared, but like I said earlier, if any members of the audience want to stick their question at the Q&A, and we can direct that to the relevant panel member as well, by all means, please fire away. So just want to really kick us off. So, first question is for Simon Roberts, and this one here is, how will you ensure that all housing associations and local authorities understand their roles and deliverables for ISH or against ISH?
Okay. Well, I think landlords do know what the standard is. They understand, the target that, and for ISH 1, for example, we've seen 89% of landlords meet that target in December 2020, despite all the pressures that coronavirus caused. I think the difficulty is that it's the uncertainty around determining what's the most appropriate measure in what's a pretty diverse housing stock and how that's going to be paid for. Those are the uncertainties. So I think, like Pilgrim, we can see the shining city on the hill. We're just there's a bit of fog and swamp in front of us right now that we need to find our way through to get where we want to go to. And there's the other uncertainty, of course, we don't really know what the ISH 2 review is going to produce, except that we know that it has to change significantly if it's going to deliver net zero carbon heating. So I think that needs to be done. I think there's things, that doesn't mean we can't do anything, because I said before, I think we can look at fabric first and look at all those measures, but there is that uncertainty, and I think we need to get that resolved as quickly as possible.
Great, thanks, Simon. Just moving on to Simon Rogers next. So just as a resident, from your sort of perspective, how important is it for you making that contribution towards net zero?
Towards net zero, I think with ISH 2 and making the homes more efficient in the way they're heated and the way we heat them. But I'm always thinking about things in a much more holistic way, because it's not just about the energy efficiency of the properties. And I know that's a way to go, but I feel that these issues are not shouldn't be looked at in isolation on themselves. It's a much more broader question that we should be asked. So you have decarbonisation of housing and net zero on properties and heating. But while we're still building houses from materials that we ship halfway across the world, we're never really going to have a net zero on housing, no matter how much we speak about it. we nearly every house in the UK at some point or other will have CLS timber in it for stud walls and things like that. And whether that's C16 or C24, it doesn't really matter. At the moment, we buy it from Scandinavia, Central and Eastern Europe. We have masses of forestry in the UK, and we don't produce CLS timber for the building industry. And I find that's the sort of thing that's going to hold us back when you're talking about things like fabric first. I think it's important for me, because of the way my mind works, and my degree is in environmental science. I think it's important that we all do our bit. Things that we have to look at in a broader spectrum rather than just one issue.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Simon. David, just moving on to yourself, just a wee question for you. So this is something that comes up a lot in conversation that I've been having with various sort of organisations, and it's just around the sort of skill set. So it seems that there are no actual qualifications or training requirements in this area for housing association internal staff. Do you feel that this is an area that requires some urgent attention?
That's quite a left field one. I haven't. I mean, in my assessment of, I mean, I'm not a technical expert at all, but my assessment of the greatest challenges facing our members, I'm not sure. I don't think I would question knowledge in relation to, fabric. I mean, we're all learning, and we all want to learn from every project that we see, every sort of pioneering project. So everyone can learn, but I think I don't question those basic levels of knowledge. I do on renewables, because I think we are all sort of looking forward to learning more about renewables, about heat pumps, about how much they cost to maintain and what some of the challenges are, and which buildings they won't work in anyway. But no, I mean, we're all on a learning curve, but I don't think there's any particular lack of knowledge within social landlords, if I can say that. I think the lack of knowledge in education is more within owners, and I don't blame owners for that. I think that's where the biggest education work is needed.
Yeah. That's maybe another discussion point, David. I can kind of see at the corner of my eye, the Q&A. So we might revisit that later on in the session. That's excellent. Lorna, just moving on to yourself. So as head of asset and compliance, I can imagine you have a lot of challenges to overcome, and still so many to come in the future. So what are your biggest challenges for your organisation that you face when trying to achieve ISH2 or working towards that?
Thanks, Tony. I think the biggest challenge is understanding your stock, knowing how it's performing. So we had a stock condition survey carried out in 2019 for 100% of our assets. At the same time, we did 100% EPC, so we could have a good understanding of the total performance of our stock. And then it's going through the asset strategy to understand where your priorities are. The next big challenge is the cost. It's hugely expensive for fabric first approach when you've got over 10,000 assets across the region. We are averaging a band D at the minute, so our first milestone is going to be met quite comfortably. But as we get into 2032, it gets more costly. Some of our properties are reaching a band D, and that's them. That's exhausted. We've done everything that we can to maximize the energy efficiency for that property. And then it's looking at exemptions, but you don't want to go into the exemption categories. You want to do everything that you feasibly can do within reasonable parameters to get to where you need to be. So for us, it's understanding your assets, and then the cost. That's cost prohibitive in some contexts. So it's making sure you're profiling your investment portfolio right, and looking at over the 30-year strategy is not just your 5 to 10, it's the widespread and the holistic approach to investment.
Yep, brilliant. Thanks very much for that, Lorna. Simon, just back to yourself. So regarding one of the CITB reports that I picked up on recently, so building skills for net zero stated in order to meet targets, 22,000 people will need to be trained or retrained in energy efficiency by 2028. Is there anything being done to support the housing associations and local authorities in equipping staff with the appropriate skill sets to achieve ISH2 and work towards wider net zero targets within the sector? And are there any supply chain development plans to improve things as we move forward? Again, that kind of feeds back to the question I asked David a few minutes ago.
Yeah, no, it is an area which my colleagues lead on, but it is certainly something which Scottish Government is doing quite a lot. They're trying to develop a new strategy for the heat and buildings supply chain. That should be out this summer. Looking at strengthening that chain and what needs to be done to deliver what we need to see happening. They give me I haven't spoken to them in the past. I know there's a whole list of things they've done where they're providing support for retrofit skills or developing training projects or reviewing what workplace trends are needed and so on. But I think one of the key messages that always comes back to is that this is something where there's a shared responsibility, because we need to work collaboratively across the whole chain. And one of the key things that social landlords can do is, if we can work with social landlords and identify what projects we want to carry out and give some certainty about what will get funded and what can be delivered, that can then be shared through the back to the educators, so make sure we've got the people with the skills to deliver it. So I think the more we can do to be clear about what can be done in individual properties and by landlords across Scotland, we can be much clearer about what the skills will be, and then get the funding committed to deliver that kind of training that's needed for those supply chains.
Excellent, Simon. It's definitely a big talking point at the moment, and I think it was a couple of weeks ago there was a debate in Parliament, and that was one of the big topics that was mentioned. Yeah. So it's a huge issue as we kind of look at this and moving towards the targets that are in place, or the milestones. Just back to Simon Rogers, be interesting to hear it from your sort of perspective as a resident. Are you open to using technology to make improvements in your home, such as having visibility on the efficiency of your property? So we found that empowering residents with technology to give visibility over your property's health, such as things like air quality, which due to the retrofit process, sometimes air quality and stuff like that, it can have an impact on the sort of living conditions within the dwelling. So do you think having that visibility would be good on the health of your property for yourself as a resident?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I have no problem with using technology for that kind of benefit. I have PV panels on the roof, and they're linked into the Grampian housing offices. They can pull off the information about how much is being fed back into the tariff when I'm not using it. That's we don't need to know, but I would like to know because I'm nosy. So that sort of information and the monitoring of rooms. I think most people on the site where I am now, it's a 15 property site. Majority of them have some time or other have had to have mold treated because of down to condensation. So it was sort of a standing joke at one point. If you got a bit of mold, it's condensation, and there doesn't seem to be any way of actually getting the housing associations away from that thinking. Whereas if there was some form of monitoring system in place, and the tenant, and it was easy enough for the tenant to actually acknowledge and see what was going on in a room, in the long run, I suppose it would save money, and indirectly then that will be passed on to tenants as well.
Yeah, and that's where resident engagement really will be key, Simon, in educating tenants and speaking to them about the technology that is available to help really improve the health of their home and ultimately the health of the resident living within the property as well. So that's excellent. Just back to yourself, David, touching on the kind of data side of things. So how important do you think it will be to have that critical data available to make informed decisions about investment programmes? Any thoughts on that?
Well, actually, my main thought on that is relating to one of the comments in the Q&A, which is around I without being complacent, I would imagine the data on social housing that's available is a lot better than the data on private housing. I mean, the Scottish House Condition Survey has been getting smaller and smaller, and it's been harder to sort of, for instance, use that data to look at which private housing is improving, and a lot is over the years. That's the general trend, as opposed to certain types of housing like tenements and other commonly owned stock, which is perhaps more static or more deteriorating. So I think the issue around data again is largely about how confident we can be that we know enough about the state of private housing.
Yeah. I think something that came up recently in conversations I've had as well, I think the Energy Saving Trust has some good data on the state of all sort of properties across Scotland. And another interesting point was the Scottish Social Housing, the condition survey that's been made, seems to be getting smaller and smaller in terms of size. So that's excellent. Thanks very much for that, David. Back to yourself, Lorna. Next question for yourself is, what has your approach been in terms of improving energy efficiency within your stock? Has it always been that fabric first approach? And have you found your approach to be successful, if so?
Yeah, no, definitely. Always look to do the fabric first approach for energy efficiency measures. We've just finished another for EWI, which was successful. So it's definitely the less energy you need to heat your home is reflective in your energy consumption. And again, that's the direct saving to the customer, and you're preparing your property then for your renewable energy. So it's making sure you understand the assets, your archetypes, what you're putting on the property, how it's going to perform in 5-10 years time, and if there are going to be any issues. So it's always a fabric first approach for us.
Yeah. See, just on the EWI point, it was probably something I was going to ask you later on. Have you ever come across any scenarios where you have a block, maybe a mixed tenure block, and you may have an owner in that same block who has perhaps refused that or not willing to contribute towards that sort of investment? Have you come across that?
Definitely. We've got 479 blocks in DGHP, and 270 of them are factored. So we do have a lot of communication with our owners. We work very closely with the council and the energy agency to maximise funding for owners when we're going in. We start a consultation process very, very early to make sure that we have that engagement with the owners. We set up groups with the factored colleagues to try to get the buy-in, to look at what the benefits are going to be. One thing that we are experiencing is, because the factored blocks have had previous lack of investment, it's more than EWI that needs to happen. You need to do the roofs, you need to do the windows. So it's that whole approach, and it's very expensive. So maximising as much funding as we can for the owners to make sure that whole building is encapsulated is far better. Yep,
absolutely. I can imagine that would be quite a tricky scenario to navigate if you've come across that. Just back to yourself, Simon Roberts. What mechanisms of financial support will be provided to housing associations and local authorities to achieve significant work programmes that they have to undertake to achieve EIS 2?
Yeah. Well, I think before looking at the mains, I think it's important to be clear that EIS 2 doesn't remove the responsibility to ensure the investment is cost effective. So, yeah, there is that. You're talking about measures to the EWI that, or heat pumps and things like that. These are expensive measures. You add them onto the cost of the property, then there's potentially a significant impact on rents. So I think there's an expectation that landlords should have an investment policy that's rational, and that that there is this consideration about what is the impact of investment and the cost to tenants. Having said that, realistically, we're not going to be able to deliver the scale of change that's needed unless there's some support there. And at the moment, the first step of that is the Social Housing Net Zero Heat Fund, which is a commitment to make 100 million available over the next 5 years, and then an additional 10 million put into that for the first year of the programme for 21-22. We'll see what happens with that, carrying on into the next year. But there is funding there. Direct funding from government, though, to be clear, will not pay for the whole cost of this. And we need to look at that. And as David said before, there needs to be an acceptance. There's a cost in the private owner-occupied sector as well that's going to have to be contribute part of this.
So we will be finishing off the CIH Ideas Lab in next month's episode. So if you're already tuned in, make sure you come back for episode 28. And right now we're going to go to our resident app advert.
We're all used to smart devices, but what about smart homes? Aico with HomeLINK wants to make all housing smarter. And within these smart homes, we want to put your well-being first. But how does it work? And why would you want a smart connected home? By deploying a suite of sensors and alarms throughout a property, a variety of factors such as temperature, humidity, and carbon dioxide can be measured. Your fire, smoke, and carbon monoxide alarms will also be linked and monitored. This data is then funneled through powerful algorithms, delivering your home's health checks straight to the HomeLINK resident app. Insights like these will enable you to live a safer, healthier life, but also be more efficient and aware of potential knock-on effects. For example, you'll be notified if a particular room is at risk of mould, or perhaps if dust mite allergens are present. You'll also know if the indoor air quality is affecting your productivity, pre-existing health conditions, or if it's dangerously cold. And much, much more. Previously, you'd be in the dark. But with HomeLINK, you'll discover these things early and be able to counter them before they even become an issue. It could be as simple as opening a window. The HomeLINK Resident app puts you in control of the health and well-being of your home and family, so that you're empowered to take the first steps before needing your landlord to step in.
Next up, we have our Regional Specification Manager, Dave Richmond, visiting Stirling Council to discuss the implementation of our smart home technology. Dave will be joined by Alexis Scrivener, the Transformation Lead at Stirling Council. Dave will be discussing the smart home technology, the HomeLINK environmental sensors, how they've implemented the EI1000G gateway. Dave will also be talking to a resident, Robert Cairney, discussing his experience with the technology and how it's benefiting him.
Hi, my name is Dave Richmond, Regional Specification Manager for Aico, covering the east of Scotland. Today we are in Stirling to meet with the Stirling Council and some of its tenants to discuss the implementation of smart home technology in their homes. I have the pleasure of being joined by Alexis Scrivener, Transformation Lead. You've been involved with HomeLINK and Aico for some time now. Tell us about the journey that you've been on with HomeLINK specifically.
Well, we've been on a journey for many years now. It started when Stirling Council were interested in a challenge to look at how can we understand our assets, our property assets a bit better. How can we understand where we need to put some effort into repairs and maintenance of some of our properties. And we were looking to be able to engage with our buildings, have an understanding of what's happening within our buildings. But that soon moved on, and rather than just look at the asset itself, working with HomeLINK, we understood that some of the technology that we were using wasn't just going to be helpful for us looking after our properties and our assets, but was actually going to help us generate a healthier home for the people that were actually living in the property.
So in terms of the future then, what does the future hold in the relationship between Aico, HomeLINK and Stirling Council moving forward?
The future for Stirling Council with Aico and HomeLINK is really exciting, and we are planning on rolling out this technology for over 500 properties per year until we've done the whole stock rollout.
So that's us arrived at the property. We're now going to go in and meet with Robert. Robert is the tenant for Stirling Council. We're going to now install our very first set of smart home technology. Let's go inside. In terms of then, as you know, this is a significant investment by Stirling Council. They're going to deploy this technology in all of their homes. What's it like to be part of this? What's it like to have this technology here?
Well, it's innovating and it's really enjoyable. It's been great. We've had a gentleman called Jordan come out and show the app and actually, talk me through it.
Yep, great.
And also it's really good to see what's coming in the future.
So I'm now joined by Jimmy McGrory, Technical Team Leader. Thanks for sitting down with us, Jimmy. Nice to see you. So we now understand that Stirling Council are now embarking on a rollout across the properties. What do you think the biggest challenges of that rollout will be from a technical and engineering perspective?
Well, one of the main challenges we see is the numbers involved. So we're looking at combining the installation of the gateway and the sensors with a programme of electrical inspections. So basically we're killing two birds with one stone.
So in terms of using the technology in place, how will you look to prioritise the properties, what property you do at what time?
Stirling is probably kind of unique that 80% of our properties are in an urban location, but we have 20% which are rural, and rural can be 50 miles from the centre of Stirling. So hopefully we can use the information gathered from the sensors to develop a plan where we can use our capital investment programme to target these properties and improve the properties themselves and the well-being of the tenants.
The technology that you're deploying through this rollout will then give you an enormous amount of data and insights. How do you think you're going to start to use that data to make informed decisions around the property's performance?
Having the data and the information basically gives us a lot more power to the elbow, where before it was a one-off visit. Somebody goes on a particular day, looks at it. If it's sunny that day, if the weather's hot, you might not be seeing the same problems that they see during weather, the damp weather, winter. So having a record over a period of time is invaluable to us.
Fantastic. And of course, adding to that as well, we have the resident app, which is going to be in the hands of your residents. That will help the council as well be able to look at things that they can do as a resident to improve on their performance as well. Yeah,
we see that as a positive, because giving the power to the tenant, giving them the information to hand, will help them see what the problems are and possible solutions. So it's not the first time we've had to deal with problems where tenants are doing their washing on a Wednesday in a specific room. We see signs of mould there. If we can see that from the information coming in to our offices, we can then direct the tenant to the app, and the app will probably tell them, you know, open a window, improve ventilation, things like that. So we see this as a great benefit.
It was great to hear about the brilliant work going on in Scotland, especially Stirling. Thanks to everyone involved from Stirling Council. Now we're going to go to a short advert about our Aico Community Awards. If you haven't entered already, the deadline is the 31st of March, so please don't forget to enter. Thank you.
In the third segment of today's episode, our Relationships Manager, Tony Boyle, is going to be visiting the Select headquarters in Edinburgh. He's going to be joined by Alan Wilson, who's the Managing Director of Select, and they're going to be discussing the Alarm Ambassadors campaign. So this was launched off the back of the Scottish legislation, which came into force in February 2022, and it seeks to help people in financial hardship to access the alarms that they need to be compliant. So let's see what they've got to say.
My name is Tony Boyle and I am a Relationships Manager at Aico. Today I'm delighted to be in the Select HQ. Select are the regulatory trade body for electrical contractors in Scotland. Today we're going to be exploring the Alarm Ambassador campaign, which we are working closely with Select on, and supporting vulnerable households in achieving the legislative requirements in Scotland when it comes to fire and carbon monoxide safety. So now we're going to chat with Alan Wilson, who is the Managing Director of Select. Well, just from a Select perspective, Alan, how important is it for you as an organisation to be involved in the Alarm Ambassador campaign?
Well, I think, Tony, you know how important safety is to the electrical industry as a whole. And I think the Alarm Ambassador scheme, which you've kindly supported via Aico, has actually proven the importance of providing that safety net to customers across Scotland. It's really, really important, and we're really keen to provide as much support as we can to installers, to manufacturers and others in the industry to make sure that people are kept safe in their homes.
Brilliant. And how do you feel about the legislation as a whole, Alan? What is your thoughts on that? Has it been a good thing in your opinion? I
think obviously people are generally reluctant to take on board some things that sometimes you're doing for the best particular purposes for them, to save them and save their lives. But I think when you look down and you drill down to the real reasons why we're doing this, to protect lives, to save lives, it's very difficult for people to argue against that. So I think it's really important that people take these on board, take the precautions, get the alarms installed by proper professional electricians and keep themselves safe.
Absolutely. So what would Select's opinion be on, I mean, we've seen this happening in Scotland and we've known about it for a number of years, but what would your Select's opinion be on a kind of nationwide sort of harmonisation of standards and seeing this sort of legislation being implemented in other parts of the UK?
I mean, it's always hard, isn't it, Tony, when you've got one part of the United Kingdom having part of an installation and other parts choosing at the moment not to do that. I mean, for me, when it's such a safety critical part of the industry, I think we have to come together as a United Kingdom and have that installation undertaken in all parts and all homes across the whole of the United Kingdom. So I would definitely support this in other parts of the UK.
Excellent. And just the last question I've got for you, Alan, how important is it and how critical is it that as a professional organisation or contractor that is fitting life safety devices in people's homes?
Yeah. Well, as you probably know, Tony, we've been working with a number of organisations connected to the industry with support from organisations and manufacturers like Aico to put forward a proposal to have regulation of electricians, because I think it's such a safety critical industry that we have to have some protection for the customer. So what we're aiming to do is to have protection of title. So to be called an electrician, you would have to have proper qualifications. And fitting life safety critical equipment such as your alarm systems means it should be fitted by properly qualified people. So 100% behind that campaign, and hopefully Scotland's government will make it happen.
So it was great speaking with Alan and discovering more about the Alarm Ambassador campaign and hearing on the campaign from Select's point of view. So now we're going to move on site and we're going to be speaking with Technical Electrics, who are a contractor taking part in the Alarm Ambassador campaign, but we're also going to be speaking with a homeowner resident as well, who is going to be benefiting from the campaign. I'm delighted to be joined by Paul, who is a homeowner resident in Edinburgh here today. So Paul, how did you hear about the alarm campaign?
Well, I knew that it was compulsory to get them fitted, and I was researching online to see if I could get any help with it, and that's when I came across the site.
And did you have any concerns around the home insurance with regards to sort of complying with the new legislation that's coming?
When I first heard about the campaign to get them installed, I phoned up my insurance company to see what their position was on it, and they said that if they weren't fitted and anything happened, they would be reluctant to pay. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And how does it make you feel having this new technology installed?
A lot happier and a lot safer.
Good. So obviously we're doing some great work here in Scotland in terms of improving legislative standards. Do you think that's something you would maybe like to see rolled out UK-wide? Certainly as an Englishman living in Scotland, Scotland seems to be leading the way. Or a Welshman.
Yeah, I do. With everything that's available nowadays with regards to technology, I don't see why it shouldn't be rolled out. It would make things easier for insurance companies. They'd feel a lot safer about properties, because I'm sure there's quite a few deaths a year through accidental fires. So yeah.
How does it make you feel, Paul, the Alarm Ambassador campaign that's been ran by ourselves and Select and Cairn Repair? Cairn Repair are doing some great work UK-wide and Scotland-wide, offering alarms to households that are maybe going to struggle to comply with the legislation.
Well, quite honestly, I wouldn't have been able to afford to have it done myself. There's no way, because I mean, I'm just a pensioner, I've got no savings to speak of. So it would have been a worry because of my insurance company's stance on it, you know. It would have been extra stress that I can do without with the rest of my health conditions. So unless it's publicised more, I don't see how a lot of people are going to manage it. I really don't.
Thanks very much for your time this morning, Paul, and I hope you're happy with your new alarm system within your property and it makes you feel
Will
safer.
be when I can let the dog back out.
Delighted to be joined by Paul this morning from Technical Electrics. Paul, how important is the Alarm Ambassador campaign?
I actually find it extremely important, Tony, because it gives people the access who didn't normally have access to contractors, and especially the kit, to get their smoke alarms installed to bring them up to scratch, especially for a fire safety point of view as well.
Can you just tell us a wee bit more about your business, Paul? Have you fitted Aico products for a number of years?
Well, I've been in the electrical industry now for 20 plus years. I started off with a company that all they fitted was Aico smoke alarms. We'd done a lot of local authority work at the time, up and down the country. And when I became self-employed, I kind of adopted that principle. That was about 11 years ago. I then became a select member in 2011, and since then we've always fitted Aico because I find them reliable, they're easy to fit, and I've never had any issues at all with them when we're installing them.
And how important do you find the expert installer CPD training and the support that comes with it? Do you find that of importance and support?
Yeah, I find the installer training great. I mean, the first one I was on was back in 2010, from what I can remember. And then as the years have went on, I've always went to the updates. I've attended ones at electrical merchants, I've attended ones online. Even through COVID, we logged in, we done all the stuff online. And it kept me right up to scratch. Got the certificates, and with it being free as well, it was fantastic.
Good. So Paul, just in terms of the legislation that has been implemented in Scotland now, how do you feel about that? Do you think it is a step in the right direction in terms of improving fire safety?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think it's a great thing that the government's done this in terms definitely for a fire safety perspective, and I'm actually delighted that in Scotland I can be part of that by installing these alarms.
And do you think that is maybe something that could be rolled out to the rest of the UK? We've seen a great impact that the legislation's had in Scotland in terms of a reduction in fatalities, etc. And do you think that's something that could be moved to the rest of the UK and rolled out?
Personally, I definitely think it'd be a great thing to roll out over the UK. I mean, it's only making homes safer and definitely reducing lives with the new interlinked alarms.
Just the last question for you here, Paul. How important do you think it is that it is a qualified individual that is fitting these alarms?
I think it's imperative that it's a fully qualified electrician that fits these alarms. Definitely because where we've got to site them in a property, and two, because it's a life-saving device, you need to know exactly where to put them. Also, being a registered member of an approved body as well.
That's important as well.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for your time this morning, Paul, and it's great to see that you're actually giving up your time to help with the Alarm Ambassador campaign, which is absolutely fantastic, and we're all very, very grateful for that, along with the other ambassadors and contractors that are involved in the campaign. It's absolutely excellent. So we'll let you crack on and get installing alarms.
No worries, thank you, Tony.
So we've had a fantastic day speaking with Alan Wilson at Select, speaking with the owner resident who is benefiting from the alarms, and also speaking with the contractor who is supporting the campaign as well. We're absolutely delighted to be supporting this campaign, and it is so important that households all over Scotland are supported and being able to achieve the legislative requirements. In the interest of safety, this is only going to be beneficial for everyone involved, and we've already seen a huge reduction in fire incidents and carbon monoxide incidents Scotland-wide. Hopefully this is going to be a template for the rest of the UK moving forward in the future.
So thank you to Tony and Alan for sharing the information about the Alarm Ambassadors campaign. Also thank you to Paul Harries, the resident, and Paul Erasmussen from Technical Electrics, who's involved in the campaign as well. It was great to hear the perspective of everyone involved in that project. If you do want to know more about the Alarm Ambassadors campaign, you can visit the Select website for more information.
Well, thank you for that, Holly. That was a really good segment of Aico TV there. Really great campaign in Scotland with Select. Now we're going to enter the danger zone and talk about our FAQ for this week, which is how to install and house code an EI 650 smoke alarm with our technical advisor, Indra. Let's take a look.
Hello, my name is Indra and I'm a technical advisor in Aico. Today we will be talking about EI 650 battery-only smoke alarm. All alarms are manufactured in Ireland and comply with the relevant British standards. Alarms are manufactured and tested individually. This alarm comes with a built-in battery that lasts for the life of the unit. Each alarm comes with fixings, therefore it's really easy to install the alarm. Simply installing the base plate with screws provided and fitting the unit on the base plate. EI 650 is an optical alarm. It's less likely to nuisance alarm from the cooking fumes, however, it reacts faster to the smouldering fires. Audio link feature in this alarm lets you understand more about the alarm itself. When alarm was installed, manufactured, what is the life of the unit, and if you have dust contamination when alarms are tested, and different insights as well. The alarm has self-monitoring dust compensation system, and it allows twice as much dust to contaminate until alarm is sounding. EI650 comes with a test button where you can test the alarms as well as silence if they're false alarming. Each alarm comes with an instruction leaflet, therefore it should be left for the occupier of the property for contacting us or troubleshooting when they're at home.
A great Scottish themed episode of Aico TV there, but that's all we've got time for this week. Our community awards are still open, and how long have they got left to apply?
They've got just under a week to go.
Just under a week to go?
Yeah, so get your entries in, sorry, and if you do need a form, email marketing@aico.co.uk. There's still time, it's not too late.
Not too late, yeah, there's more information on our website, and if you follow us on social media on the following platforms, they're there somewhere. You can keep up to date with everything Aico, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
See you next time.